Good morning, grade 8s. Okay, today is Thursday, April the 23rd, and we've got quite a few things to talk about today. So let's just dive right in and get started. So first thing, we have started our second unit here. We're doing measurement now. No, we just finished measurement. We're doing numeration now. So you've hopefully have got a huge pile of measurement work for me finished, and now we're starting different stuff. So in order to keep our math folders better organized, what I've done is I have created a new folder underneath your name. So the old folder that was math work, where you submitted all of your work for me, is now called measurement work because everything that you did for me before was from our measurement unit. And I've made a new folder and I've called it numeration work. And this one is where you're going to put all of your work, starting with the work from yesterday on percents. I've already shifted homework that I've seen in the old work folder into the new work there. So if you're looking for your percents homework and you don't see it where you left it, it's because I moved it for you into the new folder, okay? So for today's work, make sure that you get that into the new folder as well. At the end, at the beginning of Friday, when Friday's work is due, you should have 2 different photographed documents of your homework in the new numeration section, and then you know that you are fully up to date. Okay, so next thing, Friday at 2 o'clock, I'd like to have another meeting in our Google Meet to chat and talk about all of these things. Hopefully it won't be very long, but 2 o'clock on Friday is the time. I've got it in the calendar here in the math binder, so you can look there if you need a reminder, but please try your best to be there. It'd be great if we had everybody come, okay? And if you are talking to anybody, spread the word because maybe they're not checking in regularly on their math, okay? So that's the second thing. What else? Okay, so make sure you are taking photos of your work and that the work is clear and that you can actually read it, because I am trying my best to read your work. And if your work is really hard to read, it's small, the pencil is really soft, hard to see, then it's going to be hard for me to mark that, okay? All right, I'm going to flip over and we're going to get started on our next piece of work. Thank you. Okay, so for our math today, we are looking at ratios, fractions, decimals, and percents. So we need to be able to convert these different types of units of things from one to the other, because you can express something as a decimal, or you can express it as a percent, or you can express it as a fraction, or you can express it as a ratio. So we're just gonna go through and look at how we change things from one to the other. So let's say, for example, we have a decimal here. Let's just pick a nice easy number. Let's say it's going to be 0.82. And I want to turn that into a percent. Well, this is the easiest one to do because your decimal, these first 2 digits that appear after the decimal point, those become your percentage. So right now it's 82%. Now, but what if I have 0.439? I've got 3 decimals, three digits past my decimal. Well, this is going to be 43.9%. Okay, so the decimal is shifting 2 shifts, okay, to turn that into a percent. That's the first bit. So the next bit, let's say you already have a percent and now you want to make it into a decimal. This one is also pretty straightforward. Let's say your percentage is 42%. You want to turn that into a decimal. Well, it's again, you're just shifting it the opposite way. So you put your 0 there and then you put your decimal there, and then it's going to be 42, and there it is as a decimal. Okay, so sometimes you can have a percent that's more than 100%. You can have a percentage of 123%. Let's say you got perfect on your math test and you got all the bonus questions correct as well. And the bonus questions were another 23% of the test, so now you have 123% on your test. Well, what is that going to look like as a decimal? Well, it's going to be 1 whole and then another 23, the decimal, like that. Okay, so what if you have a fraction and you want to turn it into a decimal? Well, for this one, let's just pick a nice easy fraction here. Let's go 3/4. So to turn this into a decimal, first I have to get it where the denominator is 100. So I need to look at this and go, I'm going to make that over 100. So to go from 4 to 100, I'm going to multiply by 25. So then I'm going to go 3 times 25. That's going to give me 75. Now I have a fraction over 100, and then that becomes 0.75 as a decimal. Okay? Which, if we wanted it as a percent, we would know it would also be just 75%. Wow, look at me showing it so many different ways. Okay, now the next one here is ratios. So we haven't really talked about ratios at all this year, and that's kind of a whole separate discussion. Let's actually flip our page over here. Talk about ratios for a moment. So what is a ratio? Well, it could look something like this. It could be like 5.8, and there's your ratio right there. Well, for the purposes of what the textbook is having us do today, the ratio is going to have, this number here is going to be your numerator. And this number over here is going to be your denominator. And this is not really the true way of doing ratios. It's not, this is kind of a fake way of doing it. But for the purposes of the textbook, this is how it works. So if you're going from a ratio to a fraction, it's just going to go like this. The 5 is now your numerator, and the 8 is now your denominator. Where it doesn't really work, and this is kind of where the textbook doesn't do a great job on this particular piece right now, is that what really is a ratio showing? Well, what makes a ratio different from a fraction is that a ratio is looking at and comparing two different things. So this 5.8 could actually be apples to oranges. Now, for every 5 apples I have, I've got 8 oranges. So you can imagine my fruit basket. I've got my 5 apples, and I got my 8 oranges, and I've got them all arranged there nicely, and I'm like, woo, I got lots of fruit. But that same basket could actually also have 10 apples and 16 oranges. But in lowest form, my ratio is still 5:8. Okay? So that's kind of the difference between it. When I'm looking at total fruit, with this one, my total fruit is actually 13 pieces, if that's my lowest form, or if that's my lowest form. But my total fruit could actually be, you know, it could actually be, if this was the amount that was in the basket, this is the lowest form of the ratio, could be this amount. Total fruit actually here is going to be 26, right? So if I'm looking at apples to total fruit, my ratio would be 5 to 13, which would be apples to total fruit. And this one feels good to become a fraction because it would be 5/13. It would be 5/13 there, where the 13 is the total and the 5 is the amount of apples based on that total, which is really what fractions are good for, right? Usually the denominator is your total amount, and then the numerator is that piece of that total. So we don't know if we're always dealing with a total with regards to the fractions that are, sorry, with regards to the ratios that you guys are going to be seeing today, because they never really tell you in the textbook what those numbers are worth or what they mean. Because they don't do that, we're going to assume this numerator and denominator for the purposes of today's math, okay? So here I've got, back to this sheet over here, I'm looking at my ratios to fractions. Well, let's just say we've got 1 to 9 as my ratio. That's going to be 1/9 as a fraction, okay? And if I'm going to go ratios to percents, well, let's pick a ratio that's a little more friendly. Let's go 2 to 5. That's going to be in fraction form 2/5, which would be equal to, if I make this out of 100, it's going to be 40 out of 100, which would give me 40%. So you kind of have to do that little bit of a middle step there when you're figuring out ratios to percents. You need to think about what is it as a fraction out of 100 first, okay? And then if I've got percent and I want to take that to a fraction, the trick here is that it'll want that in lowest terms. So if I've got 40%, well, as a fraction, I know that's going to be 40/100. But that's not lowest terms. That's not lowest terms at all, right? I can take that down. I can go, oh, it's only 4 over 10. Still not lowest terms. I can divide top and bottom by 2. Now I've got 2/5, and that now is my lowest terms. Okay? So that is all that you need to know in order to do the math for today. So good luck, everyone. Hope everything works out. And again, remember, if you ever have any questions for me about anything that I'm teaching you, just send me a Google Doc, and I'd be happy to get back to you. Okay? Take care, everyone.